Mr. Anurag Dubey, Senior VP and COO, IPL Tech Electric. Thank you. Mr. Gopi Shankar M, VP Advanced Engineering, Ashok Leland. Mr. Karthik Ananta, Head Research and Development Division, Omega Siki Mobility. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Yeah, thank you. Mr. Ayush Lohia, CEO, Lohia Auto. Mr. Ravi Balasu, Unit Head Automotive Engineering, India and SEA SKF. Mr. Venu Gopal Rao Nelutla, Vice President Sales and Marketing, E-Buses and E-Trucks, Electra Green Tech. Mr. Himanshu Patel, CEO and Founder, Triton Electric Vehicle LLC. Moderator for this discussion will be Mr. Sri Kumar Krishnamurthy, Vice President and Co-Group Head, ICRA Limited.
Am I audible? Thanks for joining this session on electrification of commercial vehicles. Very interesting as well as a timely session. My name is Sri Kumar and I'm part of the corporate ratings at Electrification. And if we have to talk about the last 5 years in the commercial vehicle industry, it has been a roller coaster ride. Start with say all-time high record volumes of say 18 and 19 was a brilliant year for the industry. Some demand fundamentals are pretty stable. But having said that, we have to move this to the next step. There has been a transformation happening across the auto industry. Thanks to the government's push and more importantly from the financial incentives and support support that the government had provided, we are observing a sharp improvement in the pace of electrification across the auto industry. That's it. That has started in the consumer segment. We need to understand how it could pan out in the commercial segment. To discuss this and to observe the growth trajectory and do a crystal ball gazing on how the potential lies for electrification in the commercial vehicle segment, we have a distinguished industry panel members who will be sharing their insights in terms of how the potential electrification in the commercial vehicle segment would look like. Let me start with Mr. Anurag sir. So to start with, sir, we observe the pace of electrification and really gathered pace in the consumer segment. From the commercial vehicle segment, if you can provide our initial thoughts on how the current ecosystem lies and what are all the changes that you expect the industry to go through going forward and how it could potentially evolve. Initial thoughts.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. So very good afternoon to all of you and thank you too for joining this session. So I would like to, it's a very open question and I would also like to take the opportunity to reply very openly on this. See, as far as the ecosystem is concerned, so we are at a very nascent stage in our journey of electrification in India, if you really ask. So, if you see from the market side, in the commercial vehicle arena, one side is some intra-city applications and there is something called intercity applications. So we have moved a bit on the intracity applications like three-wheeler cargo, three-wheeler passenger mobility, two-wheelers. All this has happened because there was a urge by the government and push by the government through subsidies and incentivizing the industry to decarbonize the cities. So we are the fourth largest greenhouse emitter as a country globally and third worst air quality in our cities, 10 world if you ask. With this, some movement has happened in the intracity kind of thing. But when it comes to the outside of city, that requires, so within city you can have some closed loop infrastructure, charging infrastructure, the range anxiety from using electric vehicle is very less in city. There is some backup system in the city. if your vehicle gets sold. Government also pushed, like in your house, in your societies, they are providing some property tax benefits if you put a charger. So there is some good work that has happened in last 5 years when we talk of intra-city, but intercity is lagging behind. In the last presentation, what we saw, Anirban was very clearly mentioning that 40% of the fuel is used by the heavy commercial vehicle, though the penetration is very low as far as the overall commercial vehicle is concerned. Similar cases in India, that though it is less than, the heavy commercial vehicle part is less than 5% of the CV in India, but when it comes to utilizing the fossil fuel, it is around 40% of the fossil fuel is used by the heavy commercial vehicle. So what are we doing about it? What somebody has done about it? So when it comes to these questions, then one good question that comes is that which technology is the right technology when we talk of India? So as a OEM, one person will ask that, like Mr. Petkar was in the morning saying very clearly that it just took 3 years moving from BS4 to BS6. So industry has moved and complied with that, and kudos to industry, which nobody has done in the world, but it has come at a cost, at a capex cost. Now we have started to talk about BS7. So there is another milestone. Then we talk of H2ICE engine, which is not zero emission but nearer to zero emission. Unless you have a green hydrogen coming in, it is not going to happen. Then we talk of LNG. Some 50 LNG stations was commissioned in November 2021 on Golden Quadrilateral and East-West North-South corridor. We are yet to see that happening, and really is something. So what are we doing actually? We need to give clear-cut messages coming from the government, because environment concerns are there, but they need to be coming on field, practically ground zero, something should happen. Who is going to develop the infrastructure for H2ICE engine, which is not very easy as far as mobile application is concerned. Then we talk of LNG. Who is going to invest in the LNG infrastructure? Then we are talking of electrification of highways. Who is going to invest in this? What are the messages we are giving? As a country, we need to see very clearly that, okay, this is what we are going to provide as an incentive to the industry to move towards electrification. So these are some of the questions that we need from the government side. There need to be very clear-cut policy direction coming from this. Because each industry platform, some minister will come and give a very fiery speech about some of the very technology that what we should be doing. But at the ground zero level, we are yet to see how it actually materializes at ground zero. So, thank you.
The same question to Mr. Kogi sir. What are your expectations with regard to the future trends of electrification? You can start before we move into your domain of product engineering.
I would like to say, why do we need to go to EV? We ask that basic question. Let me explain that. The earth, which is billion trillion tons of weight, moves at around 1,500 kilometers per hour. Does it consume energy? Doesn't consume any energy. Which means the physics has given a free path. It says, you go from point A to point B, and you see the Newton's law. F is equal to ma. If A is 0, your energy is 0. So actually, to say that I spend energy to move from point A to point B is wrong. In fact, kilometers per liter is, I don't agree to that. It should be what? What are you, actually you are spending energy to overcome the losses in the entire path. Ideally, if you travel from Bombay to Pune, in few minutes, you race from 0 to 100 kmph. You have to reach at 100 kmph till Pune and then degenerate. And while deceleration, you should be able to reach at the same energy you spend to accelerate actually. So what it shows is actually you are spending the energy to overcome the entire losses in this entire line. Which means more than to say kilometers per liter, actually we should say what's the losses per liter. And this is where the EV comes in. What I believe, or we all believe is that EV, they are able to make it more efficient than diesel. And here, the sustainability and environmental issues is helping us to accelerate faster, much faster. They were saying that 1.5 degrees is what we will have a target, but I heard a couple of days paper, we are touching 1.5 in the next 3 years, temperature increase. So the EV is why is one portion is environmental, but the other portion is also that it brings a lot of efficiency to the whole system. So that's one portion.
Talking from the product standpoint, sir, like, from an ICE to EV, from an engineering standpoint, what are the broad differences and what kind of a thought process goes in, if you can broadly illustrate in terms of how it could happen?
No, I think there will be 5 major areas, from IC to EV, which will require a lot of focus. The first is what I said, the efficiency. That's going to be the key. Now, if you don't bring in that efficiency, you will not be able to create that TCO, and no customer is going to buy. No customer is really going to buy if you say buy it for sustainability. There will be big corporates who will buy it, but 3 vehicles, 4 vehicle wala will never buy unless you bring the TCO. 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers have shown the TCO, hence they are all moving into the EV. We need to show enough. So efficiency is one big area. We all advance. So efficiency has to work everywhere. It may be tire, it may be transmission, it can be everywhere across the rig. That's one. The second area will be the thermal. Of course, Shefla just now indicated some of their products. The thermal becomes a little bit more complex because the operating temperature, what used to be in ice, 100 degrees, 105 degrees Celsius top tank, against an ambient of, Indian ambient of 40 degrees Celsius, is now, that delta T is reduced to 60 degrees to 40 degrees. So which means you have to put bigger radiators, bigger fans, you don't have space for it. So that's the other big area. Third is obviously the safety. EV brings with itself all the safety points that needs to be understood. The drivers, we were talking a lot of drivers in the morning session. We just have trained the drivers in the chemical industry. We taught him what is ammonia, what is all this. Now we have to train him on the EV. So that's the third area. The fourth area is on the application. Not all application on day one will be suitable for an EV. So we need to select the right application. Whereas today, if you see the diesel vehicles, they have found a business case in all the applications. There is something set in place. They know for a given KMPL, they have some rates and they are able to do a business. But will EV do the same every application may not be in the BD. So they may have selected few. The last but not the least is the architecture of the vehicle. In Ashok Leyland, I was the chief engineer for AVTR, India's first modular platform. The architecture of the vehicle, where I always suggest that you do it in a modular way, it will become more efficient operationally. So these are the 5 points I thought I'd touch upon.
Sure. While we spoke on the product, it's all the more important that we also discuss about the technology within which this product is going to run. Maybe I can invite Mr. Himanshu sir to share your perspectives in terms of the technology part of EV and what are the future trends that you are going to explain.
Great by what you said, it's actually accurate about heavy commercial vehicles being, how we bring efficiency first, and the temperature changes. As some of you guys might know, that we were actually a lithium battery cell manufacturer. For 13 years, we were doing large scale, 60 megawatt storages in northern Alberta, minus 40 degrees, 40, 50 degrees, 60 degrees in Dubai, where we had supply batteries. So, that experience, this is the reason why we got into the segment. We learned that, that a lot of EV manufacturers don't have that knowledge, how to deal with how those batteries function internally. Not just about the pack level, right? Everybody understands the pack level. Okay, you put a cooling system and you do these things, but what's happening on the inside? Because China will never teach you that. They'll just say, here's a battery, now you go figure it out. So our thing was, we actually understood the internal resistance of the battery, what functions and what creates those fires, what creates those issues that you start seeing in these temperatures. One of the things that we've done is we understood that component and we made sure that we hit those targets. How do we get to like that 60, 65 degrees, even at those temperatures, how to manage those batteries to not be safety hazards to the vehicle. At the same time, we pretty much made sure the efficiency, commend you on that efficiency because every truck I see that's heavy commercial vehicle, it's like a brick wall. There is no such a thing as aerodynamic in this country. You know, you really look at every vehicle, that heavy commercial vehicle, there is no efficiency of aerodynamics. And that's one of the things that we tackle. The first thing, aerodynamics. Because aerodynamics will get you your efficiency. And everybody knows that's the science, that's not something that we just came up with. That is the first thing. When we wanted to get into this business in 2018, we brought in some consultancies, and the first thing they said is, "Manju, I'm going to tell you, and maybe you might not like it." And I said, "Why?" Because the first thing he said to me is, "You're going to have to find a design that's going to be aerodynamically driven. And that might be a challenge itself." And he goes, "If you can break that, you can break a lot of the challenges that a lot of the industry is going to have." So that's the first thing we tackled. The second thing we learned is that, you know, looking at some of the other players who are getting, as vehicles, semi-trucks and stuff like that in the US market, they're using 1 megawatt, like Tesla, they're using 1 megawatt, and they're using, you know, in-hub motors. Again, we don't believe in in-hub motors for heavy commercial vehicles. We believed in that, like you said, using gearboxes. We use 12-gear electronic gearbox in our truck. Having the gearbox do some of the work so that the efficiency can be driven from, we can have less power usage. You know, where today we've achieved 300 kilometers with 300 kilowatt battery, which is itself is in our opinion, is where the change is going to come, right? We've done the math where diesel IC engines, 45-ton truck, you're burning about, if I'm not wrong, 12,000 rupees to achieve 300 kilometers. We're doing roughly about 2,000 rupees, which is at a 7 rupees per unit, which is per kilowatt. This is how we did the math. This is how we did the math. We're trying to figure out, you know, efficiency as far as the cost. Because even if it costs us a little bit more money to have that truck, as long as the ROI is there, right? Because at the end of the day, every trucking company is going to get their ROI. They're not worried about, you know, spending a little bit more money to get a better return at the end of the year. Because if the books can look better at the end of the year, they're willing to spend more money. And you'll get better banking systems to finance and lease. And that's the kind of system we went after, right? We went after the component of those. So from the technology perspective, having the experience will help us. And now we're working with other manufacturers and saying, look, we have the skateboard. Let's work together and let's, you know, move that space together. I think that's the ecosystem that's going to be missing in India that we are starting to see. Like in Dubai and Oman and other countries, we're seeing they're very aggressively saying, hey, look, you spent 5 years developing and testing on the major roads, testing your truck. We haven't. Let's just take your skateboard and we'll put our designs and our stuff. I think that's what needs to happen. A lot of manufacturers need to get together, create also a standardization for charging, because that's going to be the second challenge. Right? The challenge of standardizing the standard charging. So batteries. Right? What we notice in India is one guy's using 550, the other guy's using 650, the other guy's using 700 volts. Now those chargers become very unique to those individuals. Right? If we find a way to say, okay, 750 known across the board, or 600 is a known for every commercial vehicle, now it becomes very easy for all of us to become, as a team, to address those issues. How we have been tackling with our clients right now is that we're going after the mining industry guys, where they have a regular routine from the mine to the processing centers. We're going after, ports where they're actually taking the shipping containers to a warehouse, where then they break it down to the last mile, which is the 10-ton trucks and lighter vehicles. So, you know, we've gone after those clients where we knew that those clients are very easy to convince because they have that regular routine route. How do we grow that into the mass market is going to be that over time we'll build the EV infrastructure. Same and simultaneously, our trucks, when we built our first truck in 2020, we built it with hydrogen. So it was not only just electric, but we took the route of fuel cell route, not combustion route. We used plug power to get our fuel cell at the time. And what we've done today is all of our trucks, even though they're electric today, they're hydrogen ready, meaning the control boards are built in already, the wiring harness is already built in, so those who buy our truck today don't have to buy a new truck. They just buy the fuel cell and install the fuel cell, remove some batteries and put in some fuel tanks, and you're ready to go back to work. So thinking, forecasting, and what's going to happen in the future and building today is the key in our opinion, and understanding what the consumer market's looking for. We also looked after how even a woman can drive the truck, no more gearbox, manually shifting, just the buttons, right? These give the comfort of having our windshield go a little bit more further up than most standard, and reinforcing it for the rebars. The A-pillars to be the rollover cages allows us to be able to get not the anxiety for a woman where she can't see up and she doesn't know how high her ceiling is when they're driving. Creating a little bit more ecosystem. So again, we try to tackle 4 years of understanding what a consumer would want in a 45-ton truck on the road. Was one of our biggest concerns, right? And understanding the environment, and I agree with you, as climate change continues, we're going to see these hikes of, spikes of temperatures and how to address those spikes. These are the things that we've done. Simply to tell you that most people are tackling after the money, cost effectiveness. We're tackling safety and how to long-last the product. Simple way, I'll tell you one, how we control the 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So most guys are putting 250 kilowatt motor, and they'll put 150, 170 kilowatt battery. Well, your battery's going to get hot, and you're going to need a cooling system. At that time, at 60 degrees, you're not going to be able to cool it quickly. We put 300 kilowatt battery in a 250 kilowatt motor, so that we never hit that 1C. We're only hitting 0.80 C. The battery doesn't get hot, and that's where then the cooling system comes in for that 60 degree temperature to keep that temperature just as closer to 40 degrees. That's the key, right? Again, being 13 years of experience of lithium battery cell manufacturing, we knew these things because we just saw those experiences on real field actual applications. That's what's allowed us to kind of move forward in the segment, and this is, I think, how we're all going to come into play.
Very, very interesting. One critical point that you mentioned was on the ROI. At the end of the day, it has to make an economic sense for the business to operate, and more specifically with the innovations coming in, we do observe, the break-even levels are getting met even in the consumer segment. Maybe I will move on to Mr. Karthik for your views in terms of understanding, given your large experience in the R&D space, what should the OEMs and the other stakeholders largely must be doing to kind of have a very sustainable, cost-effective business model in this particular space?
Okay. So first of all, see, in order to have a sustainable CV or anything as such, first we need to know what exactly is the market requirement or anything as such. Now, I can fit in a bigger battery pack. I can fit in a bigger battery pack and offer a higher mileage or anything as such. But again, the overall cost of the vehicle will increase. But if in case, if I happen to increase the overall performance, if we start working on the performance, fine-tuning the performance of the vehicle, rather than if I, if we happen to get into the aerodynamic and increase the overall efficiency by 5%, then again, rather than covering 100, we are covering 105 kilometers. And I increase the overall rolling efficiency of the tires or each and every part of it, and then overall my the mileage has increased a little bit more, and then I give a little more technology. Okay, now in the heavy commercial vehicles, not all vehicles, older vehicles were not having these tire pressure monitoring system or anything as such. So because of which again the overall range would reduce, and or else the truck drivers used to fill in maintain a higher pressure or anything as such. So each and every performance fine tuning we do, the overall the cost of the product actually we can bring down drastically. So rather than using a bigger battery pack, I can use a slightly lesser battery pack, and then we can increase the reduce the cost drastically. And again, any which ways the transportation ministry has come out with beautiful roads or NHIs or anything. We are getting very good roads, because of which the overall the performance of the vehicles are increasing. Rather than whatever range we were getting at the earlier, we are getting much better right now.
At the same time, from a technology standpoint, these are evolving. Every year also we see interesting innovations coming in, and we have to relook. Thoughts about the kind of raw material availability becomes much more critical. there are news about some mines being made available, and potentially this could kind of offset the kind of challenges over a long term. The thoughts of that, basically.
See again, now all these days we are dependent on like all this lithium triangle that is happening over there, like where we in Chile, Bolivia, or like Argentina or anything else. So now these were controlled by our neighboring countries. They had these mines under their control. Again, the transportation of lithium from there to other place, and then battery cells are coming from China to us. So all these transportation, we were like as an end customer, we were paying for all these transportation, extraction, and everything else. But on the other hand, now that like there are a few mines that has been identified within our vicinity itself, and with all the major companies getting into the act of mining and extracting the reserve, whatever we have identified. So overall, the cost of the production of the vehicle will come down drastically. Then that initially, yes, we were dependent on foreign technology, like whether be the motor or controller or any part of the vehicle. We were actually dependent on some other neighboring countries' parts and anything as such. But with the overall, what we are seeing currently, India is coming out in a big way. In any part, the only thing as an OEM, we have to be quite adaptive in order to use such kind of an efficient parts onto a vehicle or anything else. Based on that, we'll be able to reduce the cost again drastically.
Let's move from the OEM perspective to the support system. We talk about the support system, critically the supply chain management comes to an important discussion. So maybe I can invite Mr. Ravi's contribution in terms of what do you think the part localization aspect, how would kind of evolve, and how the overall supply chain management would evolve in the electrification scope? How would it be as such different from the existing scheme of things? Because all the suppliers also have to be aligned and provide such parts.
Absolutely. Very good question. In fact, one of my esteemed colleagues has brought up the question, why EVs, right? We have EVs, green hydrogen, ICE engines, green hydrogen fuel cells. A lot is going on, and we don't know which one will be a clear winner. Without this guarantees, not be so prudent to invest, right? And then you come to EV. There are a lot of challenges there too, in terms of cost, in terms of range, in terms of charging infrastructure. So overall, you have a lot of pieces of the puzzle that's not yet clear for anybody. And then you throw in our national priorities, Forex, security, energy independence, etc., etc. So to answer your question, yes, we have to absolutely invest. But when and how, right? I think in that sense, we have seen some lessons from passenger vehicle industry. We have seen some big investments since they're able to get traction in the market with all the regulation that has been put in place. So, and the way they did it is regulation, attracting smart green investments, partnerships and collaborations, right? I would think that would be the most prudent approach for CV, as and when we see that clarity. And again, within CV there are different segments, and each technology may be more relevant than other for each of those segments. So I believe the answer is yes. How? I think we have a template to a certain degree on how fast car two-wheelers have evolved. So a lot to be seen on how or which technology is going to win in CVs.
To what extent we can gain from the global experience of what's happening in the global markets, and to what extent it can be replicated in terms of improving the supply chain?
Globally, China has done a fantastic job. Regulation can do wonders in markets. And not every economy is a Chinese economy. They are state-funded. A lot of decision-making happens very seamlessly. So while we can aspire from other regions, I think India in its own context is very different. Can our government build such a strong regulation with cash to back it up? That will be nice to see, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, right? Yeah.
Sure. 2/3 of the vehicles, in terms of the freight transportation is still covered by road. So obviously from a demand standpoint, in kind of technology, obviously the CV demand is unlikely to, have any kind of concern unless, we see some kind of, ups and downs that's inherent in the industry. He spoke about the product, he spoke about the technology, he also spoke about the part localization, the supply chain, and also how economically one can do. But everything will depend on timely financing, adequate financing, and also affordable financing. So maybe I can invite Mr. Lohia's inputs in terms of how the financing environment is currently looking like. It's specific to the electrification.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. So, in any sector we talk about, whether in IC vehicle, electric vehicle, hydrogen fuel, any technology we talk about, vehicle financing plays a very important role. If you see an overall commercial vehicle or private vehicle is concerned, hardly 1 or 2% of the total vehicles sold in India are being purchased out cash down. So 98% of the total automotive industry depends upon financing. And definitely we have seen a huge gestation and shift which has happened when initially it was being prioritized that the automotive should be promoted and vehicle finances plays a very important role in the sales of the vehicle. That kind of change yet to start in electric vehicle financing is concerned. Yes, there are a lot of startups, there are a lot of old age retail financing organizations, private PSUs, and definitely new infrastructure, new ways of financing the vehicle and then tracking of the vehicle is started, but still lacks financing in electric vehicle segment. Being the interest from the the existing big financing companies, they don't have that much interest, but being the numbers are being growing gradually, the retail finance is going to increase the ratio when it comes to electric vehicles. We need support from the government by making electric vehicle financing as a priority lending area, which will support the consumers by way of less interest costs, and definitely increase the share of the primary lending companies by making it more certain to finance the vehicles. These are the few areas from the government side. I have been into this sector for almost 13-14 years now. We have seen multiple changes over a course of last 10 years, 12 years. We need a clear-cut policy guideline. What is the short-term and long-term goal? And definitely it needs to cover a 360-degree aspect, whether it comes from charging infrastructure is concerned, the financing, retail financing is concerned, how we want to migrate from IC vehicle to electric vehicle is concerned, what about the subsidy, what kind of PLI we are looking at. So all these kind of 360-degree clarity should come from the government side, so that as a business owner, as a investor, I should be clear how I need to define my business strategy on a long-term perspective. We can't define our business goal, business aim on short-term basis, like sometimes we say that we are going to provide you this much subsidy with a timeline of 24 years, 2 years, 3 years, and then we change it. And we are not clear in between or after 3 years how this is going to shape up. Whether you talk about subsidy, charging infrastructure, shifting from existing technology to the other technology. So those kind of clarity need to come from the government with the short-term and long-term goals very much clear. If we want to really migrate from gasoline vehicle to electric vehicle, we should be clear what kind of migration are we looking at, what kind of support the government is going to provide, how we are going to migrate, what is the role of other technologies which we need to look into the aspect. So those kind of things are definitely required. From the the supply chain as far as the industry or the support system from the industry side is concerned, I definitely say that if we see a clear-cut horizon, we are definitely going to move from wherever we see that the industry is, the consumer are moving forward or the behavior of the consumers are. Definitely government plays a very important role. Very well pointed out that in China we see that everything is funded by the government when the IC vehicles have been migrated to electric vehicles, and that's what we are seeing, that the infrastructure, the backhand supply chain, China is leading the global trend. Whether you talk about from the manufacturing sector, motor, controllers, battery pack, even the behind the scene where the China don't have the mining for lithium or cobalt, but they still are lead in the way of processing the complete supply chain. So those kind of things will definitely follow from the industry side. We are there to invest money to run our business and ensure that we have a clear-cut goal and aim to achieve that. But we need support from the government side, that we don't feel or we don't have questions in the back end that might be the industry. If the government has started talking about hydrogen fuel cell, how the industry will shape up in 5 years, 10 years down the line. So what kind of support system is required from our side? We are not clear in itself. So those kind of clarities should be there in the business owner's mindset, so that they can definitely achieve their goals.
Clarity, fine. Ravi sir.
I might not be very popular with this answer, but nevertheless, since we are asking for inspiration from the global, all other countries, right? If you look at CAFE norms in Europe, they have come with very strict penalties. And closer home, if you look at the acceleration we have seen in the last 2 years on electrification from passenger vehicles, now they will have penalties kicking in sometime this year, or maybe they already kicked in, right? So incentives is one way, and creating a level playing ground for everybody in terms of legislation, it might be a penalty in this case, can also accelerate. And we have seen this working elsewhere, right? And again, the key here is it's a level playing ground. It's not favoring one way versus the other, things like that. So there are examples where it has worked. And again, like I said, in India, it seems to be working. The kind of investments we are seeing in the last 2 years in passenger vehicles, billions of dollars are pouring in, right? They're able to attract smart money from global investors, etc., etc. But that's something that can be considered for our industry.
So, we're not an Indian-based company. Our headquarters are in the U.S. First prototype was made in America. The challenges that we saw coming here, is the vendors. Vendors are not having enough supply chains. I think also not that they don't have the technology, that we didn't have the technology, but the government is, nail back on your subtopic. The government has not given a clear path, is absolutely right, to even the vendors. What subsidies do they get for doing the R&D or to do these components? I think that's important. That ecosystem builds the actual OEM as well, right? To the manufacturer. Because if the vendors are making, example I'll give you is like a 30 kilowatt onboard charger. Right? It's not made anywhere in India. But in China it's made every corner. Right? So the reason why it's not made in India is not that we don't have the technology. It's just nobody's buying it yet, and the government's not giving any kind of subsidies or anybody do anything about that, right? So there's like, okay, well, when the guy comes, we'll go backwards. So it takes a long time for someone like us to come in and build an ecosystem and pump money into this country for a heavy commercial vehicle. That was our challenge, 3-4 years of challenge of trying to get the vendors up to speed on our technology and kind of ensuring them that, hey, don't worry, we're going to stick around. So yes, government needs that backing, roadmap and understanding of the incentives all the way across the board, not just from the OEM perspective, but as well as supporting the vendors who are going to support the OEMs. Because if they're not being supported, we'll also end up paying a higher price, which increases the price of manufacturing. But if that was being done, it can be a full ecosystem, right? That's one component, and the last is, forget about the government side now, as well as, I think the heavy commercial segment needs to kind of team up and say, look, because I brought this topic up in 2018, the part of having a standardized charging port, type 2, type 1, whatever you want to call it, right? I think that needs to be mandatory, right? From the government perspective, again because nobody's going to listen to it. Tata's not going to listen to me. Some of these other guys are not going to listen to me. It's just, it doesn't work, right? So what needs to happen is the government rules and regulations has to fall in play where, hey, standardize this and that's it, right? And I give it a perfect example then. Look at Tesla. The biggest mistake America ever made in electric history is Tesla. Why? We gave billions of dollars of our taxpayers' money to them to build the EV infrastructure. And now only he can use it. It only benefits him, no one else. Right? So it's kind of like, if you're going to take the government's money and their taxpayers' money, it better be to create a full ecosystem for all the vendors, equality, right? Not just me and him and the other person. It should be across the board, right? Let's make sure that ecosystem is available because that's what's going to grow that economy to grow in a very fast way. And the finance teams and finance places can come in quicker because they'll understand it. They'll understand that, yes, it can be done. It's achievable. Right? Today, those are the questions that we have to deal with, how to achieve those targets and why we'll achieve those targets. When those roadmaps were there, it would have been a lot easier in my opinion as well. So I'll definitely say that the government body has to have their eggs in that basket where they need to put the roadmap for the OEMs to understand exactly where the roadmap's going to end up. If it's going to be electric to hydrogen in 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case might be, you know,
The right communication.
Yeah, the right communication to the people. And I think that's a lot to do with DIO and all those guys. They need to really put down that foot back.
Thank you. Very, very interesting perspectives we have had from this session on accelerating the electrification in the commercial vehicle segment. We are certain, we are hopeful that while different technologies will come and emerge, and India is a market where multiple technologies can coexist. That we are observing with the EV sector. Obviously, this would happen in the other segments as well in the commercial space. Very excited, and we hope that the country becomes a global leader in using the carbon emission. Thank you. Thanks for joining this session and any question and answers.
The forum is open for Q&A. And I would request, please consider the time as well. Yeah, thank you. Because I'm very sure that we all are very hungry right now. Are we? Yes? No? Okay, so let's continue.
Hi, my question is for Mr. Gogi from Ashok Limited. I'm Charlotte Party from Lubrizol Additives India. We are technology providers to engine oil and industrial oils. So my question is regarding electrification again. In CV, it's not that common compared to passenger car and motorcycle. And when it comes to life cycle analysis and other things, electrification sometimes is a different messaging across the board. When it compares to hydrogen ice and hydrogen fuel cells. So as representing from an OEM point of view, what do you think is feasible technology and sustainable, long-term sustainable technology, hydrogen ice or electrification and CV? That's it. Thank you.
See, electrification is the final mode. There are intermediate paths, hydrogen and all. But hydrogen fuel cell, which is again a part of it. It's a quick analogy. Telephone was discovered in the year 1870 or sometime. For 100-120 years, it remained telephone. The last 10-15 years, what happened? How many apps came, how many businesses came. The whole thing was completely changed. Take the same thing to our automobile industry. Diesel engine was discovered around 1890s, 1900s. 100-120 years was ideal. Now it's going to be completely changed. And believe me, in 10 years, it will be totally different kind of, we didn't have time to discuss, but there are completely different kind of businesses, different kinds of options coming up. And EVs, and I won't be surprised that one day, we all sell our house and start staying in electric bus as a home. And of course, you can use double-decker bus as your duplex option also. So, going forward, EV will be the final, because even from efficiency point, that's the final. But you can generate either through hydrogen fuel cell or through EV. That will be the final day of someday. I hope I answered.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much for this amazing panel discussion. Thank you so much all the panelists. Moving ahead, networking is the key